Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. We're two Scots talking about films in Scotland, and usually it's the coldest place this time of the year. Nights where you want to just spend it indoors watching movies instead of having to trek to the cinema. But in this situation, we're going to Utah, where it's probably one of the coldest places at this time of the year, but we get to watch the films from the comfort of our home, as both myself and Dallas have partaken in the Sundance Film Festival 2022. Dallas as press, me as just a member of the public, because I was just too lazy to get round to filling in an application and ended up having to spend ridiculous amounts of money in the process. So Dallas, how are you? How have you got your North Face jacket on, your hat and scarf as you're watching these movies or waiting for them to start?
Well, yeah, kind of. Yeah, I got my Sundance jumper, which I bought last year for doing it virtually, and yeah, I've got my hat and scarf on because with gas prices shooting up, it's very expensive to heat your house. So I'm wrapped up nice and warm, and I've got a mug of hot chocolate as well.
Excellent. So obviously, as I mentioned, you've experienced the film festival as press again this year. Kind of thinking back to last year, that was sort of the first online Sundance Film Festival. How is it kind of compared to last year? Have they sort of improved upon it? I know we've spoken and complained about the windows that we have to watch some films sometimes. How have things kind of been for you this time around?
I mean, it's very, very good. I mean, I'm thinking back. I guess London 2020 would have been the first kind of virtual film festival, wouldn't it? Obviously, things were still massively up in the air and people still didn't really know what was going on. So, I mean, they pulled it together quite quickly. Sundance, for me, I think, having experienced running the numbers through my head, around about 7 virtual film festivals last year. Sundance, it started in January 2021. It raised the bar, and I think it's safe to say that for me, that bar was never met by anyone else. I think it was the best virtual film festival. I mean, I'm gutted for them that they have had to go fully digital and fully virtual again. It was only a couple of weeks before the festival started. They had to make the decision to cancel the in-person events due to the spread of Omicron in the States. But, their platform worked so well last year that I think I don't think anyone's really... obviously, some people will be missing out on the thrill of going to Sundance, but I think it's what I love about this film festival is extended windows for watching your films. I'm not sure how it was on the public side, but press side, you've got either a 5-hour window to watch the premiere. Within that, once you've pressed play, you've got 3 hours to finish your viewing. For second screenings, you've actually got 72 hours. And once you've pressed play, you've got a 5-hour window to watch it. So I know the very first virtual film festival, I think that was the problem with London, was that it was very regimented times. It was like you had to be watching it at bang on 11 o'clock. And if you started it late, then you would miss out because the window would close by the end of the screening time. So I think it's a great system because it allows you more flexibility. You don't have to be also, given that there's an 8-hour difference between UK and Mountain Time in Utah. Obviously, some things would have been going on sort of like 3 o'clock in the morning. So I think the earliest I've started was 6:55 a.m. for Fresh on the Friday. Everything else I've kind of slotted in on lunch breaks and after work as well. But I've still managed to catch 11 films so far and have another 6 to go. Press-wise, we got, I think it was, you could have 10 virtual premieres and 15 second screenings. And I believe I may have an option to invoke some award screenings. So the films which do get nominated for the Sundance Festival Awards, there will be second screenings of those, so I'll be able to catch up on some I miss. The only complaint I think I have at the moment is that once you've made your selections, you are committed to those selections. there's been times where I've picked one film, say like After Yang, which I thought I'm not going to be able to make the premiere, but then I did, so I didn't watch the premiere, and it would have been nice to free up that slot. Also, as you start going through the festival, you see a lot of buzz on Twitter about this film's amazing, this one's not very good, and you wish you could switch. So that's maybe the one aspect that I don't like, but I am also very appreciative of the fact that every single film in the virtual portal is also fully captioned and subtitled. And also, I have not experienced any issues with any films being geo-locked. I know that was something that kind of torpedoed a lot of UK critics when they were signing up for the Toronto Film Festival virtual experience, and found out far too late that most of the films that they wanted to see were not going to be viewable, because Toronto specifically had in their sort of terms and conditions that you should not use a VPN. And with that, over to you, Lee. How was your public one?
Yeah, I was about to say smooth segue. Yeah, it was an interesting one because I had to use a VPN, even though if I put my genuine address. Did I end up using the Music Box address just to be on the safe side? Yes, I did. So my residence was in Chicago for signing up to this just to be on the safe side. But I've heard from other people they just used their UK address, but they just fired up their VPN, which I did. And yeah, it's definitely a pricey festival, which made me think, oh, I really should have maybe signed up for it, because I would have been accepted, but I just wasn't paying attention at the time, or I kind of thought it'll just be sort of like any of the films I want to see will be in-person ones, and anything that's online I can maybe see in a few months' time at Sundance London or Glasgow or Edinburgh, so I wasn't in any sort of immediate rush.
But then you got the FOMO, didn't you? You got full FOMO.
The FOMO kicked in, so I went with, I would have gone for more releases for sure, but at $20 a pop, which is I think about £16 a film.
London prices.
It's a big ask. For pretty much that price. So I spent $40 on 2 films. That's like £5 less than a press pass to London Film Festival. So it's always one of those things. I know London can be pricey, but it's things like that just remind you like you get a pretty good deal as press in the grand scheme of things. So I was just limited to that. I got my 2 films, because you're asking a lot when it's like you are just watching it on a TV screen, for example. You can AirPlay it from a MacBook to an Apple TV, which was good, and the quality was excellent. There was no watermarks or anything like that. You certainly got your money's worth in a kind of pretty basic level. So,
I had a virtual watermark. I had my name and email address, but it was nicely tucked away in the corner occasionally, rather than fully across the screen.
Oh, that's pretty good. And so I kind of was like, I'd heard from someone that actually lives in Utah that kind of last year he moved out from Edinburgh to there a couple of years ago, and he was like, oh, last year you could buy like a pass. It might have been like $70 or something like that, but it just gave you like access to kind of all the films online and so on. And there wasn't anything where there was like maybe different prices. So your After Yang was maybe the same as your Alan Cumming style kind of documentary from Dog Wolf style thing. So it was kind of this flat rate, which makes it difficult to pick and choose. Like, I don't particularly have a problem with paying $20 for an After Yang, but I don't think $20 for everything that's on that platform is good. And I think the people that maybe end up missing out are maybe some of these smaller films where I'd have been happily paid $5, $10, $15, a bit of a sliding scale. So yeah, it kind of kept my festival a little bit shorter than I wanted, but on the plus side, I got second screenings of both those films that I picked, and I could watch them within sort of 24 hours, but once I hit play, I only had 5 hours. So I had kind of grand plans originally to watch After Yang maybe twice, so had to kind of change those plans a little bit. But yeah, I got 2 in, so much less than yourself. But what have been kind of the highlights for you? There's 2 films that we'll both talk about that we've both seen when you've finished Saving the World and After Yang, but what's been kind of some of your early highlights of the first week?
Well, I mean, things. I mean, it's going to be difficult. It was always going to be difficult to top last year because one of the films that I saw at Sundance last year, actually, the first film I saw at Sundance last year was a little film called Censor, which ended up being my film of the year. So the bar was set very high. And the first film I watched was Fresh, which is a film which stars Daisy Edgar Jones as a woman who is at her wit's end with the dating game. She's fed up of all these sort of Match.com, sort of Tinder dates where she just meets a bunch of arseholes. So when she, stumbles along a rather simple meet cute in a supermarket, with Steve, played by Sebastian Stan. Everything looks like it's going swimmingly, but you can. I think they always say you never really know someone that you're dating until you've been on holiday with them, and it's safe to say that Steve is not exactly what he appears. I mean, there was always a red flag with the fact that apparently he has no social media presence, so there's that. And I don't want to spoil the twists and turns that come our way, but let's just say it explores the somewhat literal horrors of the modern dating world.
Yeah, that certainly seems to be one of these kind of trends that we're seeing a lot more, and kind of as you kind of get our generation of kind of filmmakers coming up, they're talking about what they've experienced, and dating has gone from the Harry Met Sallies of the world to you met someone on Tinder, or Plenty of Fish, or you think of that sort of Julia Fox movie that came out a few years ago where it's people are meeting through kind of sex chat rooms, etc. It definitely, you see that generational shift with filmmakers about the type of romance stories that they're coming up with, I think.
Yeah, I mean the problems of knowing who you're dating is has always been there. It's just the medium of which of how you find these people has moved on. The Tinder, the sort of swipe left and right and whatever. That was 20 years ago. That was a thing called shag tag at your local nightclub, where you'd walk around with either a red sticker or a green sticker, whether you want to be approached or not. So. But no, I think this one has a lot of interesting things to say. It's written and directed by a woman, so it's a very interesting. It's not going to be for everyone. It is very shocking the way it plays out, but it's also got some other cathartic moments as well. But it's certainly a statement on how women in the dating world feel that they are viewed as items and commodities, and fresh meat perhaps by men.
Interesting. So I guess it's been one of those ones. I know Censor made a huge impact on you last year. Has there been a film perhaps in that first week that's come close to giving you that experience?
I mean, this one's probably the closest. I mean, there's a lot of sort of horror or horror themed films here, but that's the one that's certainly made the boldest impression. There is one 5-star film which I have seen, only one, but I think we'll be talking about that one last, perhaps.
I think so. So yeah, I think one film we've definitely both seen we both saw together. You got the joy of watching it with a watermark. I got the joy of paying $20 for it, and that's Jesse Eisenberg's directorial debut, adapting an Audible audiobook that he wrote, and it's called When You Finish Saving the World. So it's about Evelyn and her son Ziggy, who seek out replacements for each other. As Evelyn tries to parent an unassuming teenager at a shelter, Ziggy fumbles through the pursuit of a brilliantly young woman at school. So a pretty prestigious cast, really. You've got Julianne Moore, you've got Finn Wolfhard, best known to people from things like Stranger Things and the recent Ghostbusters movie, Jesse Eisenberg as a writer-director, and randomly Emma Stone as one of the producers. So A24 last time they made a big impression at Sundance was with Zola, their first adaptation of a Twitter thread. Now they've adapted an audiobook. What did you think of this one, Dallas? Was this one that brought together the prestige and talent that you expected, or was it a bit of a disappointment?
I mean, on paper, I was really interested to see this one. I hadn't sort of read too much of the story. I was looking to sort of go in as cold as possible, but I know that this was the sort of first film from the production company set up by Emma Stone and her husband. Jesse Eisenberg is a performer that I like. I know he's not for everyone, but he does have a very sort of distinctive performance style and sort of the rhythm of his speech and whatever, he's very unique in that point, to the point where it can translate off screen as well. Where when he's doing the sort of the junkets and stuff like that, it can come maybe across like kind of like sort of brisk and stuff like that. But I think it's just part of the act that he's sort of generated. And so I was interested to see, if that was going to be able to translate across to the screen, the way that certain other sort of writer directors have been able to do. Obviously, one, given the fact that Jesse Eisenberg has sort of played a Woody Allen proxy in Cafe Society. Woody Allen it's there. You can tell you're watching a Woody Allen film. Would I be able to tell that I'm watching a Jesse Eisenberg film? I have to say that I didn't really get that. But I mean, I appreciate what he was going for, in that you have these two characters who are so narcissistic and self-obsessed that they're unable to see their own failings, or the fact that what they're doing to other people is they're not really helping either. They're trying to fill this void that could be filled with each other, but with other people. The problem was that the characters are just so unlikable that I just couldn't be engaged in their journey, and was not really, that interested in them potentially getting any sort of resolution to their problems and stuff like that. I think for me, it was no fault of the actors. I think both of them deliver committed performances to the characters, but I think a lot of it comes from the writing and the direction that that's the way that he envisioned these characters. And unfortunately, it put up a massive barrier between me and the film, and it was a bit of a disappointment for me. What about yourself?
Yeah, it was a big disappointment as well. Like, I was looking forward to this one. I'm kind of not a big fan of Finn Wolfhard. He's an actor I've never really watched Stranger Things, but in any of the sort of films I've seen him in recently, whether it's been It or the Ghostbusters Afterlife, I find him quite annoying. And in this film, his character is painfully annoying. He's just this, I like a film with annoying characters or people that are beyond sort of hope or savior, but I just found him really annoying. Just this sort of fake, disingenuous guy that's just obsessed with this sort of TikTok followers or people that tune into his streams, and just it was so on the nose, this type of teenager. Like, I think I mean this in a the worst possible way. Like, his type of character is 10 a penny in Sundance movies that end up just being like really low rated, that never make any sort of strong impression beyond that. I just found every time his character was on the screen singing, talking about his website, trying to act all political, sucking up to people, I was just sitting there thinking, I've spent $20 on this. And I was thinking, like, a few weeks ago, I was really annoyed. I asked for a side of toast at a cafe, and I got like a
artisan toast,
decent sized bit of bread. Yeah, so it was a side of bread, with one like normal size, one half size, and I was charged $3.75. And for that whole weekend, I just kept thinking to myself very often, I just spent $3.75 on a side of toast. And then I was sort of thinking, like, oh my god, I've spent like four times the amount that I spent on that bread on this movie. And it was just like, I wouldn't have spent that money at the film house, which I'd have paid about maybe $5 for this thing. I wouldn't have rented it at that higher price. And I just kind of felt like really annoyed that I'd spent money on a really mediocre movie. And maybe that kind of comes back to my privilege. Like, you pay for these cinema passes or cards or go to press screenings, and you kind of take sometimes the films as they are, and you sometimes wonder, well, why aren't people spending X amount of money on a First Cow or taking a chance on a movie? But if you're paying a premium cost as people are, or to head into town and see movies, it all adds up, and there becomes a bit of a pressure on a movie, and no wonder people almost stay at home and stick with things that are safe. So as bad as the film was, it was a reminder that some of the issues some people face, and maybe I should just consider a little bit in the future. But yeah, just really poor. And A24, I think, have been on a really good run recently, but this film is not part of that. It's definitely in the lower tier, and we'll eventually get round to discussing this when it gets released in the future on the A24 project.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be really interesting to see, critics' reactions. If there was like you say, there was like a two-tier system of critics where you've got the critics who got to see this, with a press pass, so essentially for free, versus critics who had to pay to see it. Um, because I know that often sometimes some films do not actually get screened for critics and they're forced to go and pay for it to their local view on a Friday morning and rush out the review. It's always interesting to wonder if that has an effect on the final score and stuff like that, because you sometimes you can take you know whatever you've had happen to you that day into the screening, and it can affect your judgment. So I mean, I think I did give this one two, but I think I actually was probably swithering between a one and a two, but it was just that I gave it a two, I think, just because of the commitment of the actors to creating these truly sort of awful people. It's just like the treatment of the father and stuff like that. You can tell they're just so self-obsessed. But at least it continued the A24 tradition of having a mother and a son shouting at each other over a dinner table, like Hereditary, which was also a previous Sundance film. So
Yeah. So how did you follow up? Like, this is a film that swithered between a one and a two. Did you get the chance to follow up with something a bit more quality or a bit more engaging?
I mean, it has to be said that things have kind of gone on a bit of a sort of mid tier, sort of quite a lot of threes, to be honest, at the moment. Yeah, everything's sort of like, yeah, it's all right. Yeah, it's not that bad, but you always hope to go to a festival to find something that you really sort of stands out and you can connect with, and I guess sort of ride the wave. And like I did with Santa, I was pushing that film all year. You've got a guy called Matt Neglia who does Next Best Picture. He's always manages to find like one particular performance or something like that to champion stuff. He's done it with sort of Carrie Mulligan from Promising Young Women. You sort of had Mass last year. He was sort of championing those. I think this year it's Rebecca Hall's performance in Resurrection, I think, is one of his favorites and stuff like that. So you always hope for something that you can sort of champion. I mean, I'm struggling to find that at the moment. I mean, I've seen films which are okay, like 892, Speak No Evil, Living, which is an Akira Kurosawa remake starring Bill Nye in 50s London. I've had sort of disappointments, like Master was a bit of a disappointment, and Jewel, which I've just finished watching. I mean, I was a big fan of Riley Stearns' The Art of Self Defense. Was a sort of very weird, out there sort of film. It's certainly in keeping with his style, but unfortunately, I won't go into it too much. But unfortunately, it does suffer from the grey syndrome of I didn't get what I was promised, and that left me slightly sad. But I think the other best film which I've watched is Watcher, which is by Chloe Akuno, and it is a sort of European set thriller. It stars Micah Monroe, who was in the horror film It Follows in 2015, and sad to say she's still having some issues with being followed because she moves to Romania with her partner, who's taken up a job there. She doesn't speak the language. She's sort of left in the house all day, sort of staring out the window, and she starts to think that she's being watched by someone. She's being followed around the streets and stuff like that. Also, not helped by the fact that there's apparently a potential serial killer on the loose, and maybe things are playing tricks on her. Is she suffering a mental break? And I think the style of it sort of is reminiscent of things like The Tenant and Repulsion, sort of Polanski films. Also, we've got a bit of Rear Window in there as well. And I was really impressed with this one. I thought it sort of sucked me in. Micah Monroe gives a great performance, and it's got a lot to say about again, sort of treatment of women and also sort of gaslighting and stuff like that. This is a woman who repeatedly says to her partner, that I feel I'm being watched, and he's like, I think this guy's following me, and he's like, oh well, maybe he's not. He's maybe just, it's probably just a coincidence and stuff like this. And again, no spoilers, but the last shot is one for the ages. That one, and that's one I'll be championing, and hopefully we'll potentially get a release in the UK, or potentially even hit up some of the other festivals this year. Perhaps even maybe not Glasgow, but potentially sort of maybe Edinburgh in August time, or even London, depending on distribution deals and that.
That'll be exciting. That was one I would have plumped up the money for, but yeah, $20 seemed a bit of a high gamble. But you alluded to it. There was one film that you gave 5 stars to. I gave it 4.5, but I think I could imagine a scenario where I give it 5 when I get the chance to see that, and that's Kokanda's After Yang. So when his young daughter's beloved companion, an android named Yang, malfunctions, Jake searches for a way to repair him. In the process, Jake discovers that life has been passing in front of him, reconnecting with his wife and daughter across a distance he didn't know was there. So Dallas, 5 stars is high praise for something, for any type of screener. What everything has to go through watching a film like that with, your name plastered over it. What was it about After Yang that got the 5 stars from you?
Well, quite simply, I couldn't find a fault in it. Thinking back on it, I was like, what do I give it? And I was like, I think I have to give it a 5. I saw his previous film, Columbus, at the Glasgow Film Festival, which we're going to be previewing on next week's episode. And yeah, it was a film which just, it's kind of like about loss, or, losing your place in the world and sort of finding your path again. And it kind of has a lot of similar sort of themes here. You've got this family that have lost their robot, the helper. He's a big brother to their daughter, but also fulfills other roles in the house. He's essentially, he's probably like the cleaner. He probably cooks for them. He's a bit of like an au pair, a maid, a chef, all those things. And also the 4th member of their monthly virtual dance competition, which is, the best opening credit sequence you're going to have all year, hands down. I can guarantee that now. And, they're trying to fill this place. The dad clearly is probably at work a lot and is forced to step up in other roles in the meantime. So he's trying to get the robot fixed, and then during that he finds out that there's basically some sort of potential spyware or memory banks hidden in the robot, and it's only when he starts looking through these that he sees his family through the eyes of an outsider. And it's just a beautiful sort of meditation. It's a very meditative film. It just sort of washes over you in like trying to find the beauty and sort of the little things in life. And there's so many fine moments in here, but I think the one that probably most people will be talking about is just a sequence with two people talking about tea that features a Werner Herzog impression, and yeah, it's just an absolutely sort of fabulous scene, and yeah, it's just beautiful. I think I likened it to Blade Runner in the it's like an inverse artificial intelligence, where rather than an AI, a Vision family part, this is one that finds himself incomplete when it shuts down. And also it's like in terms of Blade Runner, it's like they both have a man who fully failed to embrace life, but is shown to find beauty in the world through a robot who wishes nothing more than to have it for real. And yeah, I mean, it's got Colin Farrell. This is now his 3rd A24 film after Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer. And yeah, he's continuing a fantastic run in here as well. And it's got Hayley Richardson from Columbus as well, who's we're a big fan of in one of our Facebook chat groups as well. So I mean, yeah, I'm gushing over the film. I mean, you rated it 4.5. I mean, what was it like for you? Because I mean, I managed to watch it. I'm very glad that I was able to port it from my phone up to my TV. So yeah, I was really glad that I was able to do that, because it just looks and sounds beautiful.
Yeah, I was the same. It was such a relief to be able to just sort of stream it onto the TV and just let myself kind of fall into the couch. It was just one of those ones I thought, it just makes you think a lot about life and so on. And, there's so many versions of this film that I've probably watched on something like Star Trek or some mediocre sci-fi show. But just what this does here with something so simple, I'd love to know what the budget for this movie was, because they managed to do so much with so little. And it's I think it plays into that thing I think we all wish we could do sometimes, where it's like, how do other people view us? We take things so for granted sometimes, of our interaction, the people in our lives, our friends, our lovers, all these sorts of things, that we just, we assume, that kind of we're always doing our best, or, we're sending positive messages and so on. But, there's just those times you wish you could just properly take a step back and just see it, the beauty or the underrated or the glances that are shared between people. And it's just something really tender. And once you throw that music in, and there was just little scenes where it might just be, it reminded me a little bit of Columbus almost, where it might be where you see a little shot of like a beautiful building or a tree or a river or a family together, just all the different little images that make up a person's day, or a walk or a run, or, a holiday. And you just see those moments, and how many times you just wish you could get those back, just go, oh, how great was it that moment, just being underneath a tree and just feeling the breeze and the sun being out. And your memory is never as good as being able to just look at it again. And we've seen things like that in Black Mirror, where it can be used for kind of more sinister purposes, but for here it was like, this is just something truly from the heart. And I just wish people like ourselves could have those experiences sometimes, just get that little moment back, which I think a lot of this family's about, is just like bringing something back and getting that. But sometimes there's got to be a moment about kind of moving on and having that peace. And I think we've all had that thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to be at our own funeral, for example, and to see how people would view us and so on. But this feels like the closest that we could get to something like that. It was beautiful. And as a Mitski fan, really happy to hear her do some original music in that. It was just, I think in a cinema, it's great to watch something like that at home. But then the other side of the room, you see your phone flashing with like goal notifications or something like that, or a message. Like, I just want to see this one and hear it in a cinema where I just let it wash over me and really see it up close.
Yeah, I think that point about your phone and stuff like that is interesting, because I've seen far too many people, I think, on Twitter who are apparently at Sundance virtually, but freely sort of making sort of tweets and stuff during the film. And it's like, that is one thing that is lost in a virtual film festival, is the ability to just truly switch off and focus purely on the film. So that's why I wanted actually saying that, if you're only able to watch the full film on your phone, then it probably means you're not using your phone. So I mean, I guess there is that. But I think it's the thing about sort of technology and stuff like that, how we've always become sort of too reliant on technology. Sort of, certainly at the start of the film, you see that most of the interactions between sort of the husband and the wife and stuff are through virtual screens and stuff like that. Whereas like he's actually quite surprised when he discovers that his daughter is up getting a glass of water for herself rather than getting the robot to do it. And she says, "I'd just like to get my own thing." And then they share a little bit of a moment there as well. And I mean, it's but there is, like you say, there's tiny sort of elements of. I mean, I think someone said that, why does every Sundance film feel like an episode of Black Mirror? But there's you've got this robot that was, or AI that was, helping with you, and it's like, oh, he can't be fixed. You just want to trade him in for a new model, and it's like, so yeah, it's like your AI helper in the future will become like the latest iPhone, I think, and something like that. But I am looking forward to being able to see this one again in the cinema as well. I think just to let it sort of completely wash over you and not have any virtual or technological distractions in it anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's the frustrating thing with a festival like this, like with like Edinburgh, Glasgow, and sometimes London. Some of these releases are like imminent. They'll be in UK cinemas in a few weeks or maybe even a few months. Where this is like, when will we get After Yang in the UK? I think according to the PR emails I've got, March for the US, but again, it will need to be picked up by someone in the UK. I mean, going off the top of my head, this one feels very much like a Curzon film.
I don't know about you, but I think Curzon would be, or someone like that would be a perfect fit. I think for this type of film and would do a great job. But that's just me.
So, how do you follow up a 5-star movie? Have you caught anything since it's come
Well,
close?
that was Friday. So yeah, I've been on a run of sort of threes. With the Watcher being a 4, sort of 2s and 3s since. But I do have 6 films left to watch. So I've got the Alan Cumming film, My Old School, which I've got coming up. I've got Aubrey Plaza and Emily the Criminal. I've got Lena Dunham's Sharpstick, which I've heard not great things about, but my wife is a fan of girls, so we're going to watch that one on the telly. I've got the Evan Rachel Wood documentary, Phoenix Rising, which was a bit of a last minute addition. And then I think a Welsh comedy called Brian and Charles, which is another one about a potential robot companion. So yeah, 6 more films to go, and yeah, I guess I'll be able to brief you on those next week and see if there's any crossover between Sundance and the Glasgow Film Festival, because actually, yeah, as this one drops, we'll be finding out the schedule, but it gets released to the public now on Thursday. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what they've got, and hopefully be able to pick out a few things that we'll hopefully be able to see in person and switch our phones off for.
Absolutely, yeah. So fingers crossed, and we'll be back next week to kind of wrap up Sundance Festival. Will I spend another $20? Remains to be seen. Probably not. I don't. But yeah, so we'll be back next week to talk Sundance and Glasgow. So thanks very much for listening. Take care. Bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.